What's really happened, I think, in the last few years is that the world has become increasingly interconnected in some sense, right? So now we're talking about information coming from people, from processes, from the technology element itself, and now we're also getting in information also from devices in some sense. So really, there is a whole lot of information which is available out there. The whole point is it's a challenge for enterprises, or it needs to be addressed in some sense in a really efficient manner, because end of the day we're talking about how this information is going to be used by enterprises, how they're going to really manage the insights which are coming from it, and are they going to manage in the first place or not, around those elements. And in that context, what we're really talking about is with respect to the processes itself, the how process agility can be built as a result of the information that one is deriving, both from structured and unstructured source elements, and also the governance aspects of it. So information not falling into the wrong hands, the right people having access to the right information as and when they need it, and so on. So the risks and the governance elements of it, and we're also talking about the insights element of it, the analytics element of it. So what are people really going to do with all that information, and how it is going to have an impact with respect to the decisions that they're really making, right? So unstructured content is that which is coming in from people. It is coming in from the ecosystem. It is coming in. So when I say ecosystem, we're talking about customers, employees, partners. We're talking about information that's coming in from devices. So there's a lot of content, unstructured content, and the reason we call it unstructured is because there is no uniformity with respect to its source, with respect to its formats, with respect to how it is being used in the process of delivering that particular role or job in some sense. So let me give you some examples right here. So when we talk about operational processes, for instance. Any operational process like manufacturing, R&D, quality, take a simple process like finance. And when you talk about finance, and within that, we talk about approval workflows, we talk about payment approvals, we talk about procurement processes like invoices, the procure to pay cycle, the order to cash cycle. All of these cycles have a lot of documents like your invoices, your vendor information, your marketing materials in the case of a marketing org. You have your brand assets, you have CAD drawings, for instance. There is a lot of documents which is coming in, which is being generated in every business process, and the workflows. Therefore, once that comes into the system, the workflows of that, the automation of that workflow, the email approvals, emails to PDFs to every document is actually unstructured in nature. 80% of a business process is typically unstructured in nature, and just 20% is going and sitting back in your transactional systems like your ERP, CRM, SRM, and so on and so forth. Digitization on its own has been around for several years, so it's nothing new. Enterprises have been scanning and digitizing documents. Some have done it better than the rest. Some are still maintaining it in physical formats, but that by itself is not something totally new. That has been in existence for quite some time. But what happens after that, really? That starts with a point where they are getting in those input documents and they're trying to make sense out of it, okay, to have that information disseminated to the right user for the processes that they need to start working on it. So they get notifications perhaps from those documents, and then they start working on that process. And based on that, a whole stream of process management, in some sense, a whole stream of business process automation begins to flow. Okay, and there are various aspects of this business process automation, both with respect to its entire cycle time, okay, its entire length and breadth of it, that you want to cover which processes and what, within those sub processes that you need to cover from an automation angle, as well as what aspects of governance you need to deal with as well as what kind of insights you want to derive from that process automation. So when you talk about technologies, I think technology comes at the very end, and organizations ironically assume that technology comes, at the forefront, whereas in reality, technology is it comes at the very end. I think what is first to be determined is from a customer side of it. How can I automate this process? And whether you adopt analytics or information management, or whether you do that solution on cloud or on premise, and all that discussion actually comes in later. What is really important is what value should one derive from that information once it's inputted into the system, and how processes can really be automated. So that automation cycle, okay, is what is the meat of the opportunity, really from a customer side of it, and the intensity of that automation, whether it needs to happen end to end, whether it needs to happen for a specific cycle, and how quickly it needs to happen. Nowadays we have robotic process automation, for instance, and that really accelerates the whole process significantly larger in terms of routine tasks. So that element of the intensity of that automation is something that also needs to be determined. So yes, that's a huge opportunity. ROI is really driven by, let's talk about costs first, right? Let's talk about process agility, and process agility having an impact on cost. Okay, so the more agile the process, the lower the cost in some sense. And therefore, the as-is really needs to be very clear. What is the as-is process? What are the challenges with the as-is process? And what really are the high-level associated costs with the as-is process? And then have a roadmap with respect to what kind of reductions we want to see from a cost standpoint, what kind of increase in cycle time we need to see from a process agility standpoint, and what is the impact, therefore, eventually on the overall process cost. So the ROI really comes in from all those elements. So we are talking about reduction in cost. We're talking about improved visibility, okay, which by itself is a very strong is a very strong advantage to organizations when they have improved visibility into the process and into what people are really doing within their organizations, and how productivity could be improved significantly as a result of that visibility, as well as visibility with respect to the output that's coming in from the various structured data elements as well. Right? So we're talking about improved governance of that entire process, the reduction in cost or the process agility, the improved governance, and better decisions, which are really a result of a automated process. All those are going in directly into the ROI bucket. Versus the kind of investment that one is going to put in to automate the end-to-end process. And when I say the amount of investment that one is putting in, I would think that enterprises typically tend to marginalize a little bit on the change management aspect, right? Which is a very important aspect of that investment itself. So I've seen enterprises which have fantastic tools, absolutely A-grade solutions, which are robust and which have been implemented in the best way, and yet the ROI is not as much as they would like it to be, or the ROI is not working out in terms of how it was originally planned. And the reason for that is the change management. How the culture of the organization needs to be built in some sense, right? Even to realize the right kind of returns, and that's where the tough aspects begin to play, right? Because it is not possible to change. It is very difficult to change cultures in a really quick time frame. So we are talking about adoption of the solution, and if the solution is not adopted by the right stakeholders, irrespective of whatever math you have at the back end, that's really complete nonsensical paperwork, right? So one has spent journeys and really rich journeys across all of these tracks, and assuming that everything has gone right, yet the ROI could not be the way it should be as a result of the change management. So that means that there has to be buy-in from the stakeholders early on, and this also means leading from the top, where senior stakeholders in the organization really take ownership and really take that that drive or the kind of passion to kind of ensure that the execution happens in the right way. So the adoption of the solution is a very critical component of the ROI measurement.